Microsoft Excel 2003, Collaboration, Protecting Workbooks. Remember, I said that we're having back-to-back videos. The first one, the previous one, was all about sharing. It was the kindergarten thing. Now it's about protection. How do we make sure that people don't go in and mess up the work that we've done? And maybe we don't want anyone to be able to open up certain workbooks. How do we do that? Can we password protect it? You betcha. We can do that easily. And that's what we're going to see in this video. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at how we protect our workbooks in this second of the two parts by preventing any changes in occurring that we don't want to allow, or certain people from doing any changes. Then we're going to take a look at passwords and digital signatures. Passwords to protect, digital signatures to prove that whoever makes changes or does something and signs it, that they are who they say they are. So like we said, in the first video series, we took a look at how we're sharing our workbooks and everybody's happy and we're making sure we're not stepping on anyone's toes by either accepting or rejecting changes based upon, what's happening in real time. But maybe you want people to be able to open up a workbook but not make any changes to it. Or you might say, it's okay to change this part, but it's not okay to change that part. That's what protection, workbook protection is all about. And that, of course, is part of the collaboration. That's why this is the second part of this series. So let's go ahead and open up a file that you're probably familiar with. You've seen it before if you've seen one of the other videos that we've done. And this deals with the PTO pre-formula and talks about our paid time off availability. Now, for example, let's say we wanted to protect these cells so people couldn't use them or change them, or maybe we want to just make sure that the names stay the same way or the identification badge is the same. Whatever we want to do, we can protect this in one of three ways. We can either assign a password to a cell, or even, of course, a range of cells, and then no one will be able to make any changes to that cell or range unless they know the password. I mean, that's fairly straightforward, right? And then the other one is we can lock a cell or a range and then turn on worksheet protection and just say, hey, look, these will not be able to be changed, and we can even hide them. Plus, we can also prevent certain types of changes to a worksheet and allow others. What do I mean by that? Well, maybe I don't want the formatting to change here, but I could want to change what's in the text, or vice versa. I want the text in these to remain the same, but someone says, you know what, I don't like gray, I want to make it look better. Okay, well, someone can change the formatting, but you're not allowed to change any of the text that's entered or the dates or any of the formulas that's in there. This is all part of password protection. So let's take a look at the first one. Let's say that we decide we want to protect this range, the social security numbers, and we want to make sure that people, unless they have the password, they're not going to be able to make any changes to these. So we go up to our tools, to protection, and we say allow users to edit ranges. Now, a lot of people might say, wait a minute, I thought we're protecting this range. Well, remember, you need to at first allow somebody to do something first before you can say, no, you can't. In this case, what we're going to do is we are going to have ranges that are unlocked by a password when a sheet is protected. In this case, we don't have anything yet. So let's go ahead and click New. And it's going to say, all right, what's the title that you want to call this particular range? In this case, I'm going to say it's Social Security Number. Social Security number. Makes sense, right? And it refers to these cells, C3 to C11. They're absolute cell references, and we see that's correct, C3 through C11. And of course, if I want to change anything, I can click on the minimize window and select something different. And then I put in the range password. Now, it's very important when you type in the password that you understand. If you forget it or you lose it, it's over. You can't reset it. You'll lose the ability to come in and change that data, and so you'll have to reproduce it or change something. So in this case, for the demonstration purposes, so I don't mess it up, I'm just going to call it It Is Me. Okay, makes sense, right? So I go ahead and click OK. Now, before I do that, you'll see you have this permissions button here. I'll show you what this does. You can actually do it here, or you can do it after you've set the range. So I say It Is Me. When I click OK, it says, all right, what is the password again? I want to make sure you have it. And it also reminds you that passwords are case sensitive and that if you lose or forget it, you can't get it. So now this is funny. It says it's advisable to keep a list of passwords in the workbook in a safe place. Some security people say you should never do that. Have like in your safe a list of all your passwords. Just try to make them simple enough, but not something that someone can crack. If it's a high-end security thing, I think it's beyond the scope of this lesson to tell you how to secure and encrypt everything and make it. And a password will be fine. So I say it is me. I click OK, and it says there it is. Here are the ranges that are unlocked by a password when the sheet is protected. Now, we can also specify who can edit the range without a password. For example, there might be maybe project managers or people that are on this computer or even across the network that you want to allow to be able to do it. In order to do that, there'll have to be certain users that access this particular file. So in this case, we click on permissions, and it'll say, okay, who are the group or the usernames that you want to add. Now, if you click add, it's just going to bring up your local management for your usernames in a group. And also, if you have across maybe Active Directory throughout the directory, you can do that. Again, that's beyond the scope of what we're trying to show you here. But just understand, you can put a group of people or a usernames. You can say only the local computer group can access this without a password. And then you would give the permissions here of edit range without a password. You can either allow it or deny it. So they give you that flexibility here. So we'll go ahead and click OK. We don't need to do that. Another thing that I want to show you is we can also paste the permissions information into a new workbook. This is if I want to remember that I have the social security number, range, the reference, and then the fact that we have the and I'll go ahead and click this so you can see how this works, that you can put this information, it'll open up another workbook and paste that permissions information in there. Okay, that sounds interesting. So let's go ahead and click OK, and I'll show you what happens. When I click OK, notice what happened down here. It opened up a second book, and it says we have permissions for the PTO preformula.xls that's our spreadsheet for Excel, 2006. It gives you the range title of social security number, the range of cells, whether it's password protected, and whether the users and groups. And then if you print this out, in theory, this is where you could add another column here and say password, write it down, and then you can put this and fold it up and stick it in a safe place. And that's why they might want to do that. In this case, let's go ahead and close this. We don't really need it. It's going to say you want to change it. We'll say no. But look back here. We now have this range is now protected. Unless you know the password, it's not going to allow you to be able to access or change anything on this particular range of cells. What if I wanted to prevent anybody from doing anything, just lock out a range of numbers? For example, I don't want anyone to change the employees' names and just leave those the way they are. Well, to do that, I would go ahead and select the range or a cell, whatever it is, and then I can right-click, and under Format Cells, now again, people will remember that we had this area that said Protection on it. So in this case, when we click on it, we can say, do we want to lock these cells or hide these cells? If you click on the hidden, what this will do is hide any formulas that exist in the cells as well. But notice what it said. It has no effect unless you protect the worksheet. So what you're first going to do is make sure that, and by the way, this is, I do believe, selected by default. So if we just open it up, it's locked. But of course, unless you protect the worksheet, it doesn't really matter in the protection. So we'll go ahead and we'll leave hidden undone, but we'll say, all right, it is locked. So we check and make sure that's okay. Then once that happens, we click OK, and then now we say Tools, Protection, and this time we want to protect the sheet. That means this worksheet right here, 2006. This is this worksheet right here. So come up here, Protection, Protect Sheet. You can also protect the entire workbook as well. But if we're just concentrating maybe on the 2006 sheet, we'll show you how that works. So we say Protect Sheet. Now at this point, it's going to say, all right, you want to make sure that it says protect the worksheet and contents of the locked cells. Now what you can do at this point is allow all users of this worksheet to, you can select the locked cells and you can select the unlocked cells, but notice what else you can't do. You can't format, you can't do anything in this particular area. You can't use autofilter, you can't use the pivot table reports. You can't, because none of these things are selected. However, if I wanted to, I could then change it a little bit and say, well, they can format the cells or they can insert rows if I want to. Again, your mileage may vary. It depends on how much you want to allow people to do. But if I just want to go ahead and just say, I want to protect it and all the contents of lock cells so people can't mess with them, and then check it out, you will have a password again to unprotect the sheet in case someone needs to have access to it. So we'll use the same one. It is me. I click OK. It says re-enter that password to proceed. It is me. And then I click OK. And now we have this protected. So if someone wants to come in and protect or change anything, they're going to have to know the password. So let's see how that works. We got Jeremy here, and let's say I want to change Jeremy. So I go ahead and select Jeremy, and I say, let's change his name to John. Oh, it won't let me. Look at this. It says that the seller chart you're trying to change, it's protected. In order, you need to remove the protection with the unprotect sheet command. Okay, and it says you may be prompted for a password. So if I want to remove it, I would have to come up to the tools, to the protection, and now I'd need to unprotect the sheet. I would have to unprotect the sheet. So if I do that, it's very important that it'll say, what is the password? I'll say it is me. I click OK, and now if I want to change Jeremy's name to John, I have the capability of doing that. So we'll leave Jeremy's name in here. Don't want Jeremy's feelings to get hurt just in case. So again, we can see that by utilizing the protection of the worksheet and the contents of locked cells, we can keep people from going in and changing things. So people can still open up the spreadsheet, which makes sense. We might want them to do that, but they can't make any changes to that. Now, there are some other things that we can do to help protect our workbook with some of the settings that we can do. Number one, we can authenticate our workbooks with digital signatures to make sure that when I send this workbook to somebody, that they will know for a fact that it was sent by me and not by somebody else. Because if I do this on an everyday basis as a salesperson and I'm getting sales reports and all of a sudden someone gives me wrong information and I make a decision, people can do that. It's called social engineering. And we don't want that to happen. Well, I can go ahead and I can digitally sign it. So let's show you how we can do that. First thing I would do is I'd want to make sure that I come up to Tools, under Options, and then under the Options you'll notice you have the Security tab. So you click on the Security tab and there's a couple of things that we can do here. We can set a password to open the entire workbook. Remember, up until now we've been dealing primarily with worksheets, but if I want to protect the entire workbook, I can give it a password to open. In this case, I'm going to say it is me, again, just to make sure that I don't I don't forget which one I want. I can also do the file sharing settings for the workbook as well. I can do a password for modify. I can do a read-only recommended. But here is the digital signatures. If I click on the digital signatures, it's going to say, all right, the digital signature will not constitute, and they give you this legal mumbo jumbo to say, in a court of law, you can't say this is legally binding, okay? But here, it is going to prove at least that it is me that did the changes or did whatever I did, and it will sign it when it's sent out and emailed to somebody, or maybe even a web. So this is a way that we can have the electronic stamp of authentication, and then we can obtain, by the way, these digital identifiers, digital certificates from people like VeriSign or any of the certificate authorities. To do this, you would just click the ad. It would say this needs to be saved as an Excel workbook before it can be digitally signed. Do you want to save the workbook? We'll go ahead and say yes, and then I'll say select the certificate you want to use. At this point, I would have all the certificates that I have. I click OK, and then we can do that. But I'll go ahead and click this. I don't have any certificates on my computer right now that I could use. But see, this is going to enable us to then go ahead and select that certificate, click OK, and then in the title bar, let me cancel out of this, click OK so we can password open it. It's going to ask for this. It is me. Click OK. Up here, it would say PTO pre-formula signed. It would say signed, and so that way I would know that this is digitally signed for this particular one, and then I could then click save to save the workbook. Now if I want to be able to view any of these digital signatures that are attached, again, all I'd have to do is go back to Tools, come back to Options, click on Security, and then click the digital signatures, and then if I had one here, I would select it, and I would click View Certificate. And at this point, it would then show all the people who have worked and signed this particular Excel spreadsheet and who issued their digital IDs. So this is a great way for us to double check to make sure that the information that we put into this thing is who they say it is. I mean, in today's society, in today's electronic world, you have to make sure that you have some sort of security and authentication. Digital signatures are the way to go. So let's go ahead and cancel out of this. And again, there's a couple other things that we can see here. We'll talk about macro security in the macro video, but privacy options. I can remove personal information from the file properties on save. This is good if you have a company and it's got, when you signed up your Excel or your Office 2003, if you have personal information in there, you can remove it from the file properties. So if someone right-clicks on a file and looks at the properties, they won't find out that your name and maybe your title or what company you work for, because people can use that kind of information against you, and they might start guessing your passwords, or the fact that because it's Chris Ward from CBT Nuggets, he uses it as me on everything. I actually don't, by the way. I just use it right here. So we click OK, and now what we've done is we've said, look, to open up this PTO pre-formula, what we have to do in order for this to work is I'm going to have a password to open up this workbook. So let's test this out, okay? I'm going to go ahead and close this file. Well, first I want to save it. So I click Save, it saves it. And then I'm going to head and close the window here, and that way I'll keep Excel open. Now I want to open this up. Now the good news is I can hit File, and it should be one of the top ones right here, or I can click Open, and then click on the PTO pre-formula. That was the one I worked on. When I click Open, it's then going to say, oh, PTO pre-formula is protected. What is the password? Now remember, if I don't remember it, I'm not going to be able to open it. But I do remember. It is me. I click OK, and bada bing, bada boom. Here we go, guys. PTO pre-formula. I can now come in here and start working on this particular workbook. In this video, we looked at how we protect our workbooks. Even though we like to share and do collaboration, we do need to make sure that we maybe prevent any changes from occurring. So we can go ahead and do that by selecting ranges of cells or individual cells and even the worksheet itself and say, look, you're not allowed to do this, but you can do that. We also saw how to protect the workbook by putting a password on it on whether someone is able to even open it, and maybe we want to sign it to make sure that somebody, if I'm sending this through the email or through the web or whatever, that they can say, wow, hey, that is Chris, because there's a digital signature that was assigned by VeriSign that is assigned to him, and so I can tell that that is Chris's work, that is Chris's signature, or Bob's or Dan's or James or Jeremy's or anybody else's that comes in and works on this particular workbook. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.